What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Go Long Show. I'm Tyler Dunn here with Jim Monis. We're going to preview every division in the NFL right up to week one of the season here on the podcast. And as always, if you subscribe to Go Long at golongtd.com and within the Substack network, you'll get every single column, every single player profile, team deep dive, right there. So thank you so much to everybody who has subscribed to Go Long. I greatly appreciate it. So much in store for you all, which we'll be announcing very, very soon. Jim's role is going to expand here. Bob McGinn will clarify everything that Bob will be bringing to Go Long this year. Extremely excited for everything ahead. And if for those who do subscribe, thank you. You power everything that we do. And not a day goes by that we don't appreciate that. So thank you so much for spreading the word here on the podcast. In this little world that we've tried to carve out, Jim, we are fueled by our good friends at Fatty Beer. Part of those plans, too, I think we have to have a preseason shindig of sorts at Fatty. Waiting to hear back from Nick and Chris to clarify those dates. But with that will absolutely happen. So anyways, Jim, it looks like you've got a new mic. You've got some headphones, although we're a little worried about your battery situation right now, right? There's something going on with the juice. Do you have enough energy in the tank for an episode?
Tyler, it's go long. We got to power through this. That's old. We can't make excuses right now. It's training camp has started. We got to be in better shape. We got to finish right now. We got to get through this episode.
You're unburdened by what has been, which is most important. Okay. NFC North, we got to start with the North. Packers, Vikings, Bears, Lions. This is the best division in football, as far as I'm concerned. I know the AFC North has one hell of a case to make, and maybe they are the best division over there in the AFC North, but I still love top to bottom what we're looking at here. We might as well start with the team that won the division last year, the Detroit Lions, to put the emphasis on that syllable a la Mike McCarthy. It was always great. Whenever the Packers played the Lions, it was Detroit. What do you see in the Lions, Jim? I mean, I've kind of made my opinion well known at this point. We've got a story up right now at the site. I just feel like Dan Campbell, Brad Holmes, what they've done in 3+ years is so admirable on so many levels. And Bob has kind of brought this up on the Ty and Bob pod, which we'll be getting back to as well this season. And you were in that seat with Doug Whaley and the Bills, where you're churning a roster week to week to week to week, trying to make tweaks throughout. We get so caught up in the big decisions. I'm almost as much. I'm impressed as much about those small decisions that Holmes and Campbell make. Where, look, if you don't fit what they're doing, if you're not aligned, if you're not moving in the right direction, you're out. Isaiah Buggs last year, Cam Sutton this offseason with his arrest. They are unafraid to cut you loose, and I feel like that's really built this. You hate to use the term culture. I mean, it's thrown around so much, but they do have a real culture, a real identity, and players kind of know that you better know what in the hell you're doing out there with this coaching staff, or you're out. And it's not fear-based, which is so impressive. It's not Zimmer and Patricia and Josh McDaniels. It's these coaches where you hear these horror stories. They've got a real foundation of accountability at this point. So, yeah, I mean, literally the next day after they find out about this warrant out for Sutton's arrest in March, he's gone. And then in comes the good news, the Jared Goff contract, the Amon-Ra St. Brown contract, the Penei Sewell. All of these guys got a ton of money. They remade the secondary again. I'm in on the Lions, not just this year, but beyond this year. I think that this team is going to win for a long time. That being said, I wouldn't be surprised if Green Bay won the division. But just in terms of like building something that can last, I like what the Lions did. And I don't know if you necessarily agree with that long-term opinion. So the floor is yours, Jim.
Okay, so NFC North. So here's how we have to start for me. We go right to whatever entertainment value used to for odds, but Detroit obviously is the favorite to win the NFC North at plus 150, which means, that's their $100 pays you plus 150. Okay. But second in the division is Green Bay plus 200. Pretty close. Now here's where it gets interesting. Third, Chicago plus 265. That's closer than I was thinking. So Chicago is on the radar for as far as they feel like Chicago's going to be knocking on the door in its division. Minnesota is way back, plus 950. They don't see the Vikings competing this year for the division. Okay, that's the overview from that world. For me, I agree with you that they are built for sustained success in Detroit finally. They have the core four. They are built to win the Super Bowl. But in my opinion, Tyler, where I would disagree I agree with you on sustained success. They're going to be good every year right now. But to win the Super Bowl, I think the time is now. And I think they have to do it this year, or else I think their window shuts to get to the Super Bowl. Becomes much more difficult. And here's why. Right now, you have the best quarterback in the division, Jared Goff. You do. But there are two quarterbacks, possibly a third, knocking on the door. And the rise of Jordan Love and Caleb Williams will determine the future of Detroit. And I should say McCarthy as well, or Darnold if he ends up catching whatever. But does that make sense to you how I'm viewing the importance for this year? Because one of these quarterbacks is going to take a jump. And I feel like both these quarterbacks are going to put Goff. I think they're both going to be better than Goff. As soon as, it could be this year. And that's why you have to find every way to stay healthy, get to the playoffs, win this division. It's yours. It's your division to win. A rookie quarterback should not beat you. Caleb Williams shouldn't beat you. Sam Darnold shouldn't beat you. And Jordan Love is still young. And we'll get into this. But for Detroit, I look back at their games last year against Chicago, Green Bay, and Minnesota. That's how I did the deep dive. I'm invested in Detroit to go back to them as well. This is my shot. This is their shot, in my opinion. Bears are going to be tough. Let's go with the Bears right away. The 5 categories I look at: points per play, third down percentage, yards per attempt, giveaways, and yards per play. Detroit's all dipped against the Bears. The Bears did the best against them in those 4 of those 5 categories in the division. They dipped drastically. The Bears had their number last year. Against Chicago. Now, this is what's funny, because turnovers matter so much. That's not, it just is, it always comes back to that. But what I noticed was Detroit against Chicago, points per play, they go from 4.1 all the way down to 2. Drastic. Yards per attempt, a yard difference worse. Now giveaways, they gave it away. 3.5. It's the turnovers matter for the score, but the yards per play and the points per play matter for me, because that tells me the daily in and out grind of the game. The Bears controlled the game. Detroit's offense wasn't clicking. So, okay, fair enough. Turnovers probably matter for the score. I still don't think Caleb Williams can take that. Is he good enough to jump the Bears offense? Because honestly, they can't count on turnovers. You can't, when you look back, and that's at the end of the day, that was the reason last year Detroit struggling. If you're looking at those 2 games, that's why they caught them. They caught them on turnovers. Going back to Detroit real quick, another reason I love them this year. Brad Holmes. We go back, the Southeast area scouts. It just I always smile, when I see he and Goody and from Green Bay and all Southeast area scouts, GMs now. And Brad, these 2 corners they took in Detroit this year, I love both of them. Arnold from Alabama, and I'm drawing a blank on the last name of the player, but I think the other one's from Mississippi. I'm correct. Sorry, I didn't mean to catch you off guard on that.
Missouri. Close.
Missouri. Okay.
Ennis Rakestraw.
Yes, he is so fun to watch. Okay, both of them. Watch, they're both sticky. I'm talking both can cover.
Hmm.
They know they have to get better in the secondary. And they went and got coverage and ball hawks. Arnold is the only corner I saw that could actually stick with McConkey on a route. I mean, he was it's real. His coverage is real. Okay. So love Detroit's. I love how they went for the defense. Let's improve. This is your year. Minnesota's not a factor. Going back for game, Detroit dominated Minnesota seriously. Statistically, they own them. Green Bay made Detroit work, as we know, and turnovers played a part in those games as well. So it's not any rocket science. Detroit is the favorite for a reason. You would agree. Here's where I go with you. Do you think Chicago could be the number two, the team that is challenging Detroit more than Green Bay? What if Caleb Williams rises quicker than Jordan Love? What if Jordan Love hits a little bit of a wall this year? Maybe he doesn't play the Jordan Love that we saw the last half of the year that was over the top five. I mean, it was special play. But just say Jordan Love comes back to the pack a little bit. Special is hard to keep up unless you are that guy. But just say he comes back to the pack a little bit and Caleb comes out burning. And we know the Bears defense can play. Bears become the second team in that division quick.
It all depends what you think about Caleb Williams. I mean, do you think that this is a quarterback who
I do.
freestyling, street balling, out of necessity at USC is going to have a hard time adjusting to disciplined NFL defenses, smart defensive coordinators? Like, is that there's going to be an adjustment period, but I guess how quickly can he pick things up? I think he's going to pick it up quickly because, I mean, Shane Waldron, we still don't know how that partnership is going to be, but did some good things in Seattle. I think did enough to get you encouraged, but mainly it's what's in that huddle. It's DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, DeAndre Swift, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze. I think a line that's good enough. We got into the rookies a couple weeks ago, but I think all three of these teams make the playoffs. I think Detroit, Green Bay, and Chicago all make the playoffs, and they're all vying for the division title most of the year. I mean, 44% of the teams in the conference make the playoffs, so maybe it's not exactly this crowning achievement, but for Chicago, it sure is. This team that's been living in quarterback purgatory for most of a century plus. I think that they're going to be good. They still have some issues, but you know what? Just sticking on Detroit, I think that's a great point on Jordan Love, Caleb Williams ascending, and kind of knowing what you have in Jared Goff, knowing the limitations, him schematically being set up for success. Now, that's where we probably disagree. I think that Jared Goff is talented enough to maybe be scheme proof and play in different types of offenses. It just aesthetically, it's not as fun as most quarterbacks in the NFL, but he's durable. He can get through reads. The guy just is never hurt. I mean, I'll never forget some of these games that I've covered, seeing him afterward, just beat to hell. Man, not most quarterbacks just are not wired like that. And I feel like even when Ben Johnson leaves, that they're going to be ready. They're going to have somebody waiting in the wings to step up and be that offensive coordinator. They've probably been preparing for it for a couple of years now. But the number one reason I think that the Lions will not only compete for a Super Bowl this year, but future years is kind of what you alluded to. Brad Holmes and this front office. You know, don't forget John Dorsey's around too. And that name in certain circles in the league, you know, maybe he has ruffled some feathers in some places, but when it comes to evaluating talent, the dude knows what he's doing. You and Doug were negotiating with him with that Chiefs trade with Mahomes. He had a say behind that. Say what you want about the Baker Mayfield draft. The Browns probably would take Josh Allen right now, but I think his track record is solid. And look at the Lions under Brad Holmes. You start with the Penei Sewell pick, the fist pumping, you know, the scene there in the draft room that we all remember. But in that draft, you also get Aleem McNeil, 72nd overall. penetrating D tackle who really came on last year. We have a profile of him up at the site if you want to check it out. Just stared in the mirror and completely changed his life last offseason. Amon-Ra St. Brown, fourth round, 112. You go to the next year. Aiden Hutchinson, to get him second overall, you're getting a cornerstone. I mean, you expect to have him rushing the passer for the next 8, 9, 10 years. Jamison Williams is the wild card. All right, this can still go either direction. They've been giving him time to develop through suspensions and injuries. But James Houston is a steal late in that draft. But I really feel like the 2023 draft of the Detroit Lions could go down as one of this team's best drafts ever. And what was everybody doing that night? They're laughing at Holmes. They're laughing at Dan Campbell. Taking a running back, 12th overall, Jahmyr Gibbs. What? He was exceptional at times last year, averaging 5+ a carry, working in conjunction with David Montgomery. He's going to be a receiver. He is fun to watch. I know he's a running back. I know the value. You don't do this, you don't do that. He's on that rookie contract right now, and you're getting a hell of a lot of value for 4 or 5 years, and you cross that bridge when you cross that bridge. Sam Laporta, tight end, one of the best, probably the best season we've seen from a rookie tight end since Mike Ditka went for 1,000 yards. I mean, Laporta caught 86 balls for 889 and 10 touchdowns. I mean, you can just feel Jared Goff looking for him in big moments. Brian Branch, I think this is what probably gives me the confidence in this class as much as anything. He's a stud. I mean, this is a positionless, roaming presence who can hit you, who can ball hawk. He can get schemed up in different ways. I think he's going to help kind of cover for some problems that arise in the secondary as they work new guys in. That class is, it just tells me that they're going to keep drafting well, right? You paid Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jared Goff, Penei Sewell. It's going to be harder to just sign players, and they know this. You have to draft well year in and year out. I think they have the people to do that, Jim.
I'm so glad you did that, because that's a long way of saying great job, Brad. And you are built for sustained success. Sorry, that was struggle. But it all goes back to Jared Goff for me. That move is the only reason we're still talking about the Detroit Lions. It worked. Brad knew it. He had the conviction. Dan Campbell believed in it. Brad was with the Rams with Goff. Goff had everything they want. Now, where we're at. Because all that, Tyler, all those draft picks would matter. Goff was not the guy.
Yeah.
Because we talked about it. We know why Goff got paid. They don't have anybody to replace him. But this is the year. Like, Goff isn't going to be, his ceiling is done. It's a wrap on Goff. We know he's an 18 in blackjack, if you want to talk that lingo. You're going to win with Jared Goff. That's proven. But, man, you better have everything else in place. Detroit does. Where I just think it's hard is I think these other teams have superstar potential at quarterback with Caleb Williams and Jordan Love. If they both ascend, you are all of a sudden third quarterback. You're not competing for a Super Bowl if you're third best quarterback in your division.
So Jared Goff is 29 years old. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. He's going to be 30 relatively soon, mid-October. I mean, you know what you're going to get in Jared Goff. It's not like he's all of a sudden going to regress. But so how long can he play at this level, you think?
Oh, he's Drew Brees. As long as he's not getting hurt, that's his style. As long as you can protect him, he can play. Brees would still be playing if he didn't have a bum shoulder. He says it himself.
Yeah. And he's got the arm to fit it into tight windows.
They're tough and play with their brain. You got to protect them.
Yeah. And they have. And that's where you have to give Brad Holmes so much credit, too. Where did they start with this thing? They started with the line. They drafted Penei Sewell.
Okay. Wanted to go back to the draft, too. What's crazy about how amazing that draft is. You could talk me into betting on the running back Gibbs or Laporta for MVP, offensive or offensive player of the year, whatever they're up for. Those two, you could argue, are the top of their position. That's phenomenal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you're right about Gibbs. Like, it's off the chart talents. That's a player that's gonna, people might not even understand how good he is yet.
It matters, especially when you look at Bob Quinn, Matt Patricia, those years before, where, I mean, you did have a quarterback. We see him. Matt Stafford has won a Super Bowl elsewhere. But you didn't draft well, right? You're drafting Jeff Okudah.
Yeah.
Now there were some players they drafted that were coached up and became better players with the staff. Jonah Jackson, the guard, he just got paid by the Rams. So he worked out. TJ Hawkinson, talented, puts up good numbers, but the body of work with their drafts, I mean, I'm thinking back, like Orion Johnson, a running back in the second round. If you can just, it starts with the quarterback. I'm with you. And Jared Goff is good enough. He's proven it to get to a Super Bowl. What you're saying is, here comes Jordan Love. Here comes Caleb Williams. And
this isn't about Goff for me. Goff is exact. I am 100% on with everything you said. You're showing up to training camp every year knowing you're competing. You're getting to the playoffs. You're getting into the playoffs with this roster every year. The Super Bowl is a different beast. The playoffs are a different beast. The quarterbacks are going to get you there in the playoffs.
I think another reason to be bullish on those Lions too, we just saw the news today. Now the conversation about an 18th game is real. It's happening.
It's happening.
Right, the NFL, they dearly care about player safety. So let's add another 70 car crashes. I mean, if you don't add a second bye week, then I mean, the PA is part of these discussions too. So, I mean, they're going to see an increase in revenue by another game, but just, God, don't gaslight us. Don't tell us you care about player safety when you do things like that. Own what you are, own the violence of the sport and work around that reality. But anyways, my point being, like, add an 18th game with another team making the playoffs. I feel like Dan Campbell is just a coach who will be able to have his team paced right. I mean, they're going to keep the big. Think about the 3 years, how they've gone. That first year, losing in heartbreaking fashion, week after week after week. I mean, Dan Campbell in tears after that one game against Minnesota. It was just gut-wrenching stuff. To the next year, where they win 9 games, they beat Green Bay at Lambeau in that finale, and man, they blew some games earlier in the season. So they kind of get the ebbs and the flows of the season already, and to go 12-5 last year, to weather some stuff. I just feel like he's a coach who kind of gets it, right? The analogy that he used, that freight train coming, that's real. Like it is. And the Packers are very, very young. A lot of 22 and 23-year-olds. They came on at the right time last year, but it's a long season. And it's going to be tough for Caleb Williams early on, especially, to adjust to just what 18 games is like. A lot different than college, isn't it? 17 for now, I should say.
17 for now. If it gets to 18, I've said this before. This might be the year to kind of just make some calls to see if it's even talked about. But if you're a good football team at some point on an 18-game season, I'm not saying it's going to be like the NBA where you're resting some vets because it's just hard with the rosters, but there are ways you could probably find games that it might be, you have to get to the playoffs healthy however you can, especially your quarterback. And maybe that's the only player that it affects through 18 games. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but if let's just a crazy scenario. Say the Chiefs are 8-2. Okay. And the next best team is 6-4 to start the season. And the Chiefs are playing the 1-9 Carolina Panthers. I'm just making up a scenario right now. 18-game season. What's the harm? given the maybe letting Patty sit a game. Like, let's see how this rookie, let's see how this young guy we want to, that you can't really evaluate in the preseason because it's not real football. Hey, let's see what we got in this young guy. He's whoever their backup is. Oh, well, we can get into that. Oh, it's actually, yeah. Anyway, point being is you could get a young guy in if you have somebody you're invested in and really want to see him play against the starters in the NFL. There's a chance in 18 games you could find a way to rest a stud quarterback. Just saying, something I want to think about. But to your point, the money's going to be too good. It's all going to roll. They're all going to roll 18 games and keep it moving. Everybody plays everybody. 32 game season. It's only 32 teams.
And the work hazard, it's a 100% injury guarantee. So players will get hurt. Depth will matter. How you churn that roster over will matter. I don't know if there's a team that does it better than the Lions. The way that they are constantly tweaking. I mean, look at they couldn't really get a pass rush last year. Constantly working that thing. The secondary, I mean, they got to the point where they had Vildor out there. You know, he's still on the team. He's a fighter. I mean, his career is incredible. We've talked about him a few times, but for him to be one-on-one with Brandon Ayuk deep in that situation, not ideal. So you trade for Carlton Davis, you draft Arnold. They're always thinking, 2, 3, 4 moves ahead. Bill Belichick, before he became the creepy phys ed teacher dating girls a third of his age. God, what a perv, man. Before he was that person, he was the master of this, right? Bill Belichick could always just find somebody. Think about all the running backs they went through. Jonas Gray busting out for 200 yards on Monday Night Football, but at all the positions, always finding a way to just improve a little bit. It's a game of inches. 3, 4 plays decide pretty much every game. You've got to have a coach and a GM who find that player who makes that difference. I think that in Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell, Detroit is set up for that. And it's just finding the guys that are wired the right way. I mean, I'll never forget that conversation with Penei Sewell a couple years back, that series on the Lions offensive line. I had to pull up the quote because I had to make sure I didn't misquote him, because it is pretty wild. So here's Penei Sewell, right? Just an absolute badass of a human, built like a small mountain. I'm not only playing for myself out there. I love to play with a purpose. And my purpose is those guys in that locker room. I'd die on the field for my teammates. I'd honestly do that. I honestly say that because they mean so much to me. Those boys and the work we put in together day in and day out, it's something you can't replicate anywhere else, to be honest. You're coming into the building at 7:30 and leaving at 8 p.m. That man is putting in the same work you have while feeling absolutely shitty mentally and physically. Now, this conversation I had with Penei, this is back when the Lions were still in that bad state, right? Off of a losing season before the 9-8 season. I remember thinking, Penei, what, really? Like, die for a game? Like, no way you're serious. And he just looked me dead ass in the eye and said, I'd die on that field with them. Maybe a little hyperbolic, but man, he was adamant that these are the kind of guys that Dan Campbell wants, that he looks for. And you add up enough of those mentalities, shit, you're going to win late in the fourth quarter when you're on E and it's 4th down and Dan Campbell's going for it because that's what Dan Campbell does. You're going to convert. I don't know how you quantify it. I don't know what all 22 angle you're looking at, but they find the players that are playing for something bigger, that have a purpose when they're out there. Play with a purpose. So yes, love Williams, but I'm not going to just push these lines to the back burner.
They're going to be, I told you that they're in the mix every year with this roster, the way it's built every single year. Just is golf good enough to compete once they hit their stride? Caleb and Jordan Love, they haven't even hit their stride yet.
I thought you were Mr. Anti-Jordan Love, that the jig is up. You said he's done. He's finished. He stinks. Jim Monas told the world. I went on
After
radio in Milwaukee a couple weeks ago, and Sparky in Milwaukee goes, "Man, your co-host is killing Jordan Love. He's killing." I said, "Well, wait, I defended you, Jim. I'm just kidding with you
yeah,
here."
okay.
I said, "No, Jim is a believer. He is the one that scouted for the Eagles and the Saints, and was director of personnel for the Bills, and has lived every possible life you can live at the quarterback position. Donovan McNabb, Drew Brees, EJ Manuel, Tyrod Taylor, Matt Cap. So you know how a quarterback can look good for a month and a half and how things can potentially shift and change. So
I
let's
was
shift to the
fortunate.
Green Bay Packers, Jim.
I was fortunate enough to be around McNabb and Drew Brees. So I know how it is so hard to, we keep using the word sustain. I'll use it for quarterbacks to sustain consistent success as a quarterback is so hard to do. People have no idea how hard they work all year to be this good. I'm just talking about quarterback. You can't really turn it off. You have to be that driven to improving your craft. And their head coaches need to be that way as well. Like we always talk about being synced up. You want your head coaches with that same energy to keep improving and getting better and not having bad years. Jordan Love has 6 or 7. I mean, really, they were beautiful games. I mean, the throws are just, you can't stop watching them sometimes, how pretty those throws are off his back foot and just that whip. It's like a blind whip. And that's where I get a little worried because there is some blind whip in it. And if you watch that first half of the season, it was a little bit hold your breath. I promise you, Goody was sitting up in those games and just saying, "Okay, hold on now. We know he's better than this." Like they knew he was better than what he was showing to start the year. But hey, it was his first season. There it goes back to my other point. It's his first year. Half a season, he looks great. I was just asking before we pay him to make him the highest paid player in the history of football. I thought you'd want to show a little more.
Even though, I'm thinking back to the first half of the season. There were some rough moments. The Denver game, the way that ended, right? You're trying to get into field goal range. The Raiders game, a prime time spot, ugly. But there was a throw in Atlanta. I was covering that one. I think Josh Lucas brought this throw up as well when we
I
had
remember
him
we
on the
talked to it. Yes.
podcast, right?
Yeah.
Former Chicago Bears personnel man, and it was dropped, but man, back foot, fourth down, tight coverage on the money. So there's an arm arrogance to Jordan Love that I wouldn't want to try to reel in if I'm Matt
No,
LaFleur and this
no.
coach and Tom Clements. Like
Oh,
I want Jordan Love. I'm not saying that you're saying that.
no.
I think that is an asset. That's the difference between 9-10 win team, 12-13 win Super Bowl contender, a quarterback who has the balls to attempt those throws. So even the way the season ended, awful, right? Across the field, cross body. I mean, it was so out of character for Jordan Love. He hasn't really kind of taken those awful risks. But even then, I wouldn't want Jordan Love to ever tap the brakes and overthink all the stuff we've gotten into about Josh Allen and how the Bills should just let Josh be Josh. Same deal with Jordan Love. I feel like if you're Green Bay, you have to let him play. And if I can drop in a little tease, Jim Monis, I will have a Jordan Love season preview story over the coming weeks. And I chatted with Brett Favre recently about all of this. Now, Brett Favre, he's had a throw or two across his body, across the field that he would probably take back. You remember one of those in an NFC Championship game. It's the reason you have a Super Bowl ring. Uh, which that
I was
remains
going to tell
one
you,
of the
no,
most
I
epic
smile
games
whenever
in
I
the
hear
modern
it.
era. Unbelievable game. God.
Okay. All
Favre
right.
just getting the snot beat out of him. It's a bounty game. A lot going on that day. But just an old school brawl of a game. But anyways, Favre, he broke down Jordan Love's game in this moment of time beautifully as only a Favre can. I mean, he's been in that position. Like I didn't even finish the question, bringing up that San Francisco throw And he just cuts in and goes, been there, been there. So definitely that will just be for our paid subscribers. So subscribe, golongtee.com. There we go. Got a market here and there, Jim.
And you're right. Everybody has that hiccup play. You get head scratcher pick. There's always a head scratcher.
Yeah.
It just, when I say always a head scratcher, when you're young like that. I think that's why Favre's was so frustrating, not for me as working for the Saints at the time, but for the Vikings. There was so much into that, more into that whole craziness at the end of that Viking Saints game with Childress just, melting down too with that to me, Tyler, doesn't get talked enough about that game. I personally think Childress, was more at fault than Brett Favre was. Coaches can win games, can't win games, but they can lose games. Childress, that's on you. But I thought that set the Vikings franchise back. That was their game to win.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think a similarity between Love and Favre would be, and not that Aaron Rodgers wasn't like this. I mean, he's a 4-time MVP. He'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer, maybe the best pure thrower of the football, right? Everybody loves to say thrower. What else are you going to do with the football? Are quarterbacks punting it? Are they rolling it across the ground? Everybody's a thrower of the football, but a similarity between Favre and Love that I'm not sure Rodgers was like this. There's a feeling like if you're down, he'll take the chances to get back, right? That Rodgers, and eventually Rodgers got to a point where, I mean, he could attempt highly difficult throws, but he still was very cognizant of not throwing picks, which is good. Not turning the ball over is a good thing. But there were so many times where he just would not take chances when he probably should have taken chances in big moments in the playoffs. I feel like Jordan Love will take those chances like Brett Favre. For better or worse, right? Maybe you have a lead and you can't protect that lead. That's what you saw against San Francisco. But I like that edge to him as a quarterback, that risk-taking nature. If you're interested in winning playoff games, interested in winning the Super Bowl, winning that, like, you're going to have to be something more. As great as Rodgers has been, a lot of playoff failures in there as well, because I'm not so sure he had that extra risk-taking nature to him that Favre had. Now, they both had one Super Bowl, right? So maybe the point is moot, but I don't know. In my quarterback, I'd want somebody that's going to take a chance. And if he screws up, I can live with it. Just like I can live Dan Campbell going for it on 4th down, blowing that 17-point second half lead. You know what you are. You know your identity. Go down swinging. I'd rather have a team and a coach and a quarterback who will take a swing versus just looking at that ball go right to the catcher's mitt.
I don't think there was a member of the New Orleans organization that wouldn't have cared on that onside kick in the Super Bowl that Sean Payton called to start the second half. We didn't know it was going to happen, obviously, as a scout. I had no clue. And I, to a man, we all looked at each other and were like, hell yeah. Like, even if you didn't get it, good, but let's go for it. Yeah. And when you have that mentality from top down, because you already know your coach is going to do it, and it starts like that. I had a coach in my coach in high school. Name was Ford Chapman, a legend in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Okay, Bishop McDevitt High School. They won state titles with Rakai Nelson was a receiver, went to Notre Dame. Blah blah blah. Okay, but he had that go for it mentality. He told us one time, we were playing a team we knew we were better than, and he said to the starters, he said, not only we're going to be up whatever, let's get up 30 at first half, let's get up 20, 30 at first half. He said, we're going to onside kick no matter, because we knew he told us this right before the game. Hey, we're going to onside kick to start the second half. We're going to score, and you're all going to get out of the game. I mean, that was the whole thing. That's how he spoke. We're going to get the lead in the first half, and we're going to onside kick in the second half. I remember thinking, we all looked at each other playing like, yes, like the team buys into the coach. Yeah. We all, yes. When your coach is excited to get you the ball back and speaking that way, that rubs off and it doesn't leave you. And then when it goes bad, guess what? It goes bad. But you're okay with that because that's how you all want to go out.
And it has to be within your identity as a
No
team.
question.
It's got to be
Can't fake
realistic.
it.
It can't be
No
faked.
doubt.
It can't be
Can't be
forced,
fake.
and we probably have touched on it here, Jim, but Sean McDermott, Buffalo Bills, Kansas City Chiefs, divisional round, fake punt to DeMar Hamlin. In theory, on paper, I don't have as big of a problem with it. The Chiefs had just went right down the field on your defense for 2 touchdowns. A defense that is missing key starters, a defense that has fallen flat on its face in the playoffs 4 years in a row. I get it. Like, you need a spark, you got to do something bold, different, but it was so out of character. It felt forced. It felt like overcompensation from Sean and the Bills to do that in that spot. It didn't work. Is that the reason it didn't work? Who knows? But it didn't work. And it's got to be, I feel like it's got to be within who you are. And I don't think it's a coincidence that the season ends and you hear the head coach of the Buffalo Bills at his season wrap press conference talk about playing to win. You know, but guys believe it in themselves. He's kind of gone out of his way to bang that drum, and it's smart. I mean, they should. It's got to be year round, right? And several coaches, several players for that series on the Bills said that tightness that you see in those big moments is a result of the other 364 days of the year. So that's what gives me kind of getting ahead of the AFC East here. That's what gives me hope that the Bills psychologically have a chance for a reset to be ready for that moment. And maybe you give it to Josh Allen instead of DeMar Hamlin on the next 4th down against the Chiefs. I just feel like, that's why I love the Lions. They know what they are identity wise. And even Jordan Love, I think he figured out who he was as a quarterback from mid-November on. And we got into it last time. He's hard to fool twice. His coaches say that, like, you throw something at him, he remembers it and he fixes his mistakes. And I think that he'll be able to adjust and adapt and evolve with whatever defenses throw at him, let alone the fact that we talk about this blueprint that Brian Gutekunst and the Packers have laid out at the quarterback position. I don't know why all teams aren't doing what they're doing at receiver and tight end, drafting guys constantly. Romeo Dobbs, Antavian Wicks, Christian Watson, Jaden Reed, Tucker Kraft, Luke Musgrave. Just draft tight ends, draft receivers as much as you possibly can. You lock him in on that cost-controlled rookie contract. Green Bay, too, much like Detroit, set up to be a winner for a long time.
The last thing I want to say about Jordan Love that I did bring up before when we spoke about it, but remember, defensive coordinators do prepare in the offseason for guys they hadn't really seen before. There's a lot of defensive coordinators that are digging on and take the challenge of this new greatest player in the history of football after 8 games. So it's not going to be as easy for, I mean, if he continues it, then he is. He's right in the Josh Allen. That's what's crazy. I mean, he was playing like Josh Allen and Mahomes. I mean, he was on that level. Those throws were that special. I don't think anybody would debate that. Can he do it like that again consistently? Okay. Minnesota. My thoughts on Minnesota. Oh, go ahead.
I think that Kevin O'Connell, Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah are probably looking back at March thinking, okay, we're not happy that the Atlanta Falcons tampered. Not that thrilled that, they had something worked out with Kirk Cousins illegally. But you know what? I think they're happy with how it all worked out because I like Cousins. You like Cousins. You know what you're getting in Kirk Cousins. We'll get to the Atlanta Falcons in the NFC South. But when you look at where the division is with Love so young, Caleb Williams so young, the Lions not going anywhere, you almost have to take a step back before you take 2 steps forward if you're Minnesota, right? And I don't even know what J.J. McCarthy is going to become. I have no clue. I don't know if anybody really does, if they're being honest. But you need an element of the unknown at quarterback versus the known in Kirk Cousins.
McCarthy needs to be better than Kirk Cousins. sooner than later. It's not going to happen this year, obviously. And that's why this year is kind of a wash, but that's okay. We knew that about McCarthy. So if you're Minnesota, you are fighting. You have the worst quarterback in your division. Okay, whether it's Darnold or McCarthy. Can McCarthy be better than Caleb Williams or Jordan Love? Personally, I didn't see that on tape. I like McCarthy. I think there's ability there. I still don't think he has the ceiling that Caleb Williams or Jordan Love has. So right now, you're fighting just to be the third best quarterback, and to get past Jared Goff. JJ McCarthy has a long way to go. I just think the Vikings. I'm telling you, Tyler. I really keep it that simple with division and quarterbacks. Like, how can Minnesota has a long uphill battle? They're hoping they're like the rest of their division. They're just curious to see, is Caleb going to be what the Bears hope Caleb is? Is Jordan Love going to continue? Now, if one of those two do not, there's your window. So if you strike with McCarthy, Jordan Love and Caleb Williams aren't the guys that they think. Now Minnesota gets their window to get in. If not, I'm not sure that window is going to open in that division for Minnesota. I mean, that quarterback thing is real ahead of them.
Totally agree. And I love O'Connell
So do
and
I. I'm with
what
you
they
on
have
this.
around the quarterback position. Like they just paid Justin Jefferson. And Jordan Addison's got his off the field issues right now, but hell of a rookie season.
Production
TJ Hawkinson, they paid him.
He can play.
Aaron Jones, he has every incentive to prove he's got something left.
They all can play. Like, it's a good football team. It goes back to your point, the division.
By the way, look at their tackles. Christian Darrisaw on the left side, Brian O'Neill on the right side.
Strong.
Top 5 tackle pairing, and that's probably on the conservative side. But I never was really that high on JJ McCarthy. I'm no draft Nick. I'm no scout. I love Drake May. Selfishly, I wanted to see Drake May in this offense with this coach. Who knows if the Patriots really would have opened up to any of the crazy offers. Doesn't sound like the Giants or the Vikings got too crazy with their offers. But it's McCarthy, and now we find out whether he's limited, right? He was more placeholder at Michigan, just making that third down throw when they needed to, or if he was this hidden gem, right? That has something to him. I kind of lean toward the former. I don't know. I feel like you have to really rationalize and if you have to talk yourself into loving JJ McCarthy.
I did not. I thought he was worth a shot, but I do think it's developmental. But I would have said the same thing if they took May. I felt the same about both May and McCarthy. I thought they're developmental, but I thought both were worth taking shots on. But I like McCarthy a little bit better.
Well, I love him here. I love him with this coaching staff and this supporting cast.
Yeah,
I think this is a great chance for him to succeed, no doubt.
Yeah, I think they should be excited. I think they have a good, like I said, they're built. Their structure in that organization seems healthy.
So when Jim Monos places his bet on a team to win the Super Bowl out of the NFC North, who is he placing his bet on?
Oh, it's in. I have Detroit Lions winning the NFC. Winning the division.
Just the NFC. Just the NFC.
Right now. NFC and division.
All right.
Golf scares me. Golf scares me to say he could beat a Patrick or a Josh or a Joe Burrow. I'm not ready to say Super Bowl there. That's why the core 4, it's real. Like, they're built to get to the Super Bowl, and yeah, anything can happen once you're there. But golf is like right on the fence for me on that core 4, because the fourth part, and Dan Campbell, to be honest with you, like, they're both, like, they're right above like the line for me as far as, I mean, they have more to prove. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I picked them to win the NFC last year, so I probably shouldn't.
Yeah, you were on it.
Deviate.
You were ahead of the game, though. You were ahead of the game. The odds on them. Yep, you were ahead of the game on them.
It'll be a difficult choice. I still have to wrap the brain around those predictions a little bit
about
more.
The Caleb and Jordan Love, and JJ.
Love.
Those 3.
Green Bay
for that
cooking.
division.
So, yeah. Also,
Move
programming
adults.
note, I'll be hitting the road for some training camps. Bills this week at St. John Fisher. We'll get out there to the Giants in New Jersey. Maybe pop down to those Browns in Cleveland. So, gonna head all over, and we've got a lot more brewing for you at golongtd.com. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, for listening, for subscribing, and sharing with a friend. We are completely independent. No corporate overlords here, Jim. And Jim, I will wait to make your announcement. I know you're still kind of picking away at your first column, but Jim is going to be doing a little bit more at the site as well. So you're not going to want to miss what Monas has for you. All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We'll catch you next time.